Welcome to the MENA Surge podcast, the ultimate source for all things Web3 and FinTech related in the MENA region. Powered by FinTech Surge and Future Blockchain Summit, taking place at Dubai Harbour, October 15th through 18th, alongside Expand North Star and in association with GITEX Global. I'm happy to be joined by our partners today from Cointelegraph MENA.
Cointelegraph is the leading Web3 publication covering all the latest trends in blockchain, Web3, and FinTech for the region.
Excited to be joined today by Caesar from Crypto Caesar Capital. Thank you for joining us today, Caesar.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
So before we get started, allow us to take a little time to introduce yourself and, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I've got a degree in law and economics. I've got a postgraduate degree in law. I trained and qualified as a lawyer. I am the founder of Caesar Capital. I'm the leader of the VIP group Caesar's Palace, and I'm across social media giving my views on the current state of the crypto market. I've been involved in traditional markets or trade FI for about 15 years, where I was generally trading commodities, gold, coffee, things like that. Then I found crypto in I think it was around about the late sort of summer of 2016. And I went down the rabbit hole and, once you go down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin and crypto in general, you very rarely come out. You just continue to go down that hole, and I'm still down the hole now and enjoying myself very much.
Yeah, it sounds like you went pretty deep down that rabbit hole, to be honest. So you started off trading commodities for 15 years, and now you're, doing all of this in the crypto space, and seems like you really drank the Kool-Aid. Why did you get into crypto in the first place, considering your background was in commodities?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I read about Bitcoin back in, I think it was 2012, 2013, in the Telegraph, I think it was. And I immediately, as most people did back then, dismissed it, a bad thing, and only drug dealers used this. And so I wasn't interested, and it was a real shame for me. And I think, I should have considered it a little bit more then. But then in 2016, I had another look, and I read the Satoshi white paper, and I thought, there's something to this, because obviously I've been trading gold and things like that. So I had an understanding around that, and I thought, well, this could be the new gold. So I continued to research, and down that rabbit hole I went. Yeah.
I mean, with somebody that has such a deep understanding of, trading items such as gold and coffee, and now being able to see the future of crypto, what do you think was that turning point for you when you read the Satoshi white paper?
I think the turning point for me was that, we have to accept that everything is moving in a digital way, and, things take time to move in that way. I mean, look at the internet. It took many, many years before we got to where we are now. I remember using the internet back in, the 90s and speaking to people in America in a chat room, and I thought it was amazing. But it's come on massively now, and you can use apps to do all sorts of things. You can speak to anyone in the world whenever you want for free. So I just thought, there's something in this. The world is moving in a digital way, in a frictionless way, and I think there's something big in crypto in general, in particular. Sorry.
Oh. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off. It's mainly the digital part of crypto that you're saying, this is basically the digital gold to you.
Yeah. I mean, I see Bitcoin as digital gold. I mean, there are only 21 million, Bitcoins, or there will only be 21 million Bitcoins once all the Bitcoins have been mined. Therefore, there's a massive, scarcity argument with it. It's, peer to peer. That there's no middleman. You can send $1 billion worth of Bitcoin for, depending on, what the miners are charging at the time, but, 60 cents, $1, a couple of dollars, or whatever, where it's pretty difficult, right, to send, $1 billion of gold, to someone halfway across the world. It would be
For sure.
very, very difficult indeed. You'd have to pay a lot of money to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess one of the things that I think of comparing crypto to gold is that there's no fake cryptos. Nobody is going to sell you a fake crypto
Yeah.
for the price of a full crypto, and that's the security of this space as well.
Exactly. And of course, if you have a ton of gold, if you're lucky enough to have a ton of gold somewhere in a vault, it's quite easy for that to be seized. It's very difficult to move that gold across a border if you wanted to, in a time where you needed to. Whereas you can simply move your Bitcoin very, very easily from border to border without anybody being able to seize it. So I think that is also a very interesting plus point that people look at when they look at Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Sounds like you dealt with a few gold smugglers back in your 15 years trading gold.
Make no comment.
So looking at you spoke about Bitcoin quite a bit, and I think that one of the reasons why people were so attracted and are still so attracted to gold is kind of how stable that is. But we've seen Bitcoin kind of go through its cycles, right? And do you think that we're in the Bitcoin bottom right now, or do you think that this is going to get worse or is it going to get better? How do you feel about the Bitcoin cycle where it stands?
Yeah. So, the first thing I'll say is obviously Bitcoin is very volatile, at the moment, and that's because the market cap is still quite small. But I think once Bitcoin reaches, a market cap equivalent to gold, I think the volatility will be, not so much. It'll be, significantly, reduced. But in relation to where we are in the cycle, essentially, for anyone who knows who I am and follows me on Twitter and listens to my YouTube channel or who is in my VIP group, they will know that I'm very interested in cycles of assets, in particular Bitcoin. Everything has a cycle, life has a cycle, the weather has a cycle, the day has a cycle. And that's true for assets as well, particularly commodities. Bitcoin has, in my view, a clear cycle, and it works within those cycles, and that cycle works on the basis of a 4-year cycle. A lot of people are interested in the Bitcoin halving, which is obviously quite important because when we get to the Bitcoin halving, that means that the block reward a miner gets paid is halved, so that generally has an effect on the price. But and the Bitcoin halving is not really a time-based thing; it's a blocks mined-based thing. So every 210,000 blocks mined, the block reward then halves. But even though that has something to do with the cycle, I don't think it can be argued it doesn't. But what's clear from the cycle is that Bitcoin tends to have, as I've said, a 4-year cycle. So if you look at Bitcoin on a higher time frame chart, for example, a monthly chart or a weekly chart. I mean, I'm looking at a weekly chart now, and you measure each peak to peak in each cycle and each bottom to bottom. You will quickly find that measurement is around about 4 years within a couple of weeks. So, for example, the peak in 2014, December of 2013, to the peak in December 2017 was 208 weeks, which is 4 years. Then the bottom from the cycle in January 2015, when it found its bottom, from that bottom to the next bottom, which was in 2018, was 205 weeks. So not far off again, 4 years. And again, the peak in December 2017 to the peak in November 21 again was 205 weeks. So not far off 4 years. And then the bottom in December of 2018 to the bottom, which we just had back in November 22. Was 205 bars. So there's a clear 4-year cycle here. To put it simply to your listeners, from peak to peak, it's 4 years, and from bottom to bottom, it's 4 years. Now, there's a possibility in time that cycle might break somewhat, and it might go into a new cycle, it might create a new cycle, but as it stands, Bitcoin tends to follow this 4-year cycle. So when we were in, I think it was June of 22, when we had all those massive liquidations across the board, massive capitulation. 3 hours capital went down. There was the Luna saga, the Don Juan stuff, all of that caused a massive capitulation in the market, and everyone was calling the bottom at that point in June 22. And I said, no, I said, we need more time. There's more time for this to bottom out. And I was right, because it took some months, but then in November 22, it bottomed out on the FTX news. And that was the 4-year cycle low. So I think that the bottom is in for Bitcoin. There are many reasons. Number one is that, it was 205 weeks from the last bottom. So, 4 years pretty much, a few weeks off 4 years. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there was massive capitulative volume in that bottoming process in November 22. And there was just a huge amount of fear in the market. Everyone was scared. Everyone was capitulated. There was blood on the streets, and the 4-year cycle was in. So for me, I think the bottom is in. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but for me, I think the bottom is in for Bitcoin, and it's a grind out of here to new all-time highs in the coming years to come.
That's super interesting. So, yeah, obviously on this podcast, we're not at liberty to endorse a certain crypto or encourage anybody to buy any sort of investment products. But if the general advice is to buy low and sell high, you're saying that Bitcoin is at the low right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I'm fairly confident that the low is in. We have quite a large position in Bitcoin. So, I put my money where my mouth is.
Sounds good. And, what do you think, determine, like, what are the contributing factors of this 4-year cycle? I mean, 4 years is 4 years. Great. Is it just, the market kind of goes up and then they decide after 4 years, it's probably not going to go that much higher, then they sell, then it hits a low again, then it takes 4 years to build up. Is it, something more simple, like, the corn harvesting or the U.S. presidential elections, which is also 4 years? What do you think is it that is determining this 4-year cycle?
Yeah, I think so, some of those things has some contribution to it, but generally speaking, Bitcoin it's in a bull trend for 3 years, where it goes up quite significantly in price, and then it's in a bear trend for a year. You can plot that out in the chart. It's quite clear. And that bear trend is brutal. It's not the bear trend you see in a normal stock, commodity,
right,
equity, etc. It's brutal. So, the drawdowns are anything, on average around about 80%, 70 to 80% drawdowns, which is massive. And that causes massive capitulation. It shakes out all the weak hands, and then it continues on, its move toward, on its uptrending movement. But I think that the halving has something, to do with it. But of course the halvings, don't fit with the 4-year cycle from peak to peak or bottom to bottom. But they certainly have something to do with the uptrend. I know that there's a lot of people who will argue that the halving has nothing to do with price appreciation, Bitcoin. I can understand that argument, but it's quite clear in the charts if you plot out each halving event of Bitcoin in history. From that halving event, Bitcoin has then gone on to, move significantly up in price. So I think there are a lot of contributions to the 4-year cycle. But this is just a cycle which Bitcoin has carved out for itself with other factors contributing around it, really.
Okay, great. And I know there's been a lot of talk about this BlackRock ETF. Can you explain to the listeners what the BlackRock ETF is, and do you think it'll be approved?
Okay, so the best thing to do is go back in history. There have been many applications for spot Bitcoin ETF. So there is a futures ETF, but of course that's not a physical spot Bitcoin ETF. So there is a futures ETF which was approved in 2018. but there hasn't yet been a spot Bitcoin ETF approved. There have been many, many applications, but none of them have been approved by the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission. But BlackRock have now applied for a spot Bitcoin ETF. And I'm sure most of the listeners will know who BlackRock is. BlackRock have a significant amount of assets under management. Off the top of my head, I think it's 10 or 12 trillion US dollars they have under management. So when BlackRock moves or when BlackRock says something, you generally listen. And BlackRock applying for a spot Bitcoin ETF is significant in my view. I think some of the sort of expert ETF guys on Twitter were saying the other day, and maybe I've got the math slightly wrong, but the listeners will get the idea. I think in the last 575 applications for ETFs, BlackRock have only been knocked back once. So, when BlackRock makes an application for an ETF, generally it's approved. So I think that this is quite significant, and if it is approved, I think it will bring quite a lot of interest to the market.
Great. And so, is this going to be like a quick approval? How long do these things normally take?
Well, there are time limits on it. I mean, it can take up to 245 days, I think. I'm not an expert on ETFs.
Very specific.
But I think it's 245 days. But, there are time periods where an application is made, then questions can be asked, and then there's a period of time, et cetera. But I think it's 240 or 245 days is the maximum period before the SEC are forced to give an outcome or not. But ETFs can be approved by the SEC within weeks. So we could have an ETF approved in the next weeks or months. But my guess is I think that we will be looking, if I was forced to say when it was approved, I would say probably Q1 of 2024.
Okay. So you think that is unlikely to affect the price of Bitcoin this year, the BlackRock ETF?
I think that I think it's having a positive effect on the price now, because I think some people are going to be front running that. So people, when they hear news, they try to front run a market move. So I think it is going to have it's certainly potentially or arguably having a positive effect on the price now. But once it is approved in Q1 of next year, which when I think it will be approved, if it is approved, then that will certainly have a very positive effect on the price. And of course, the Bitcoin halving event is due around about the beginning of April of 2024. So if a spot Bitcoin ETF is approved in Q1 of next year, that will sit just perfectly with the Bitcoin halving event.
Okay, great. So some trends to look forward to then, I guess.
I'm sorry?
So some trends to look forward to, some big events that are happening that are going to shake things up.
Yeah, absolutely. There's never a dull day in crypto, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and what about the rest of this year? Where do you think Bitcoin is going to go?
I think that, at the moment, Bitcoin is looking pretty strong. It's broken through its resistance area of 30K, which it's been struggling with for some time. And I think potentially or arguably the BlackRock news has given it that extra fuel to push through that 30K resistance area. So I think that we could have a decent run this summer. I don't see an all-time high this summer. I don't see Bitcoin breaking above $69,000 this year. I mean, I could be wrong, but again, I'm a cycles guy, and that doesn't fit with the cycle for me. So I think maybe, with a fair wind, maybe Bitcoin can trade in the region of $48,000-$50,000 this year, but I think that would be the top end of that price appreciation. Then I think it will probably come down and test the areas of support below in the sort of 20, 25, 28, 30K range, and then probably go sideways into the halving.
Okay.
So best case scenario for me is 48, 50K this year. And then we should see some real interesting price movement going into the the second quarter of 2024.
Okay, so although you do see in the foreseeable future some big events that could affect the Bitcoin price, you still believe that cycles are ultimately the more powerful factor in determining the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think for the time being, the 4-year cycle is intact, and that's something that we can't ignore. We can't just ignore something that has always played out time and time again. And for me, price, I don't like to give, top and bottom prices, because I think that's a bit of a fool's, game. For me, it's more about timing of cycles. So, seeing a high price at a certain time might indicate to me that the top of Bitcoin might be in. And of course, I'd take into account lots of other factors using lots of other indicators, including sentiment, etc. But for me, it's more of it's a time thing rather than a price thing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense then. So you're not going to get distracted, I guess, by all of these events that are kind of occurring, right?
No, but generally, as we all know in crypto, if you've been in crypto for years now, all the positive things start happening, don't they, during a bull market, and everything negative happens in the bear market, right?
Yeah.
And bear market causes negative situations, for example, liquidations, insolvencies, because people are underwater, people are getting margin called, etc. So that causes the bad news. Whereas when the market has shaken everybody out, and shed a new skin, and started moving again to the upside, more positive things happen, more venture capital comes into the space, more people are interested in it.
All right. When it rains, it pours, I guess.
Yes, exactly. When it shines, it shines.
Yeah, for sure. So you've mentioned a lot about, your faith in the cycle and the importance of the cycle, and especially the 4-year cycle when it comes to Bitcoin. How about seasons? How do you feel about the altcoin season, and will we see an altcoin season this year?
This is a very hotly debated issue on crypto Twitter and within the crypto community at the moment. Sadly, I don't see an alt season this year. I certainly think that some of the altcoins, particularly the altcoins with strong US dollar pairings, will catch up, and there will be price appreciation within those altcoins. But I don't really see any significant alt season until we've crossed the Bitcoin halving sort of time period, which is around about the April 24. So I think maybe going into the mid to latter part of 2024, we might see some movement, some significant movement in the altcoin market. But for now, I don't think that there's going to be that movement. And the reason why really is because, we've just been through a very brutal bear market, FTX, 3 Arrows, massive liquidations. We've been through a very brutal bear market, and, the market needs time to heal. And that healing comes really through confidence in Bitcoin, because of course Bitcoin is king. Bitcoin is the biggest by market cap digital asset on the exchanges. So that healing will come through Bitcoin, and Bitcoin moving up in price, and Bitcoin really exerting its dominance over the market. It's quite clear from the charts, and some of your listeners don't understand this, some of your listeners won't, but essentially Bitcoin needs to have a very high percentage dominance in the market before we start seeing more confidence from other investors come in and start buying, the alternative coins to Bitcoin. So at the moment, I think Bitcoin dominance is around about 51.5% or so. Bitcoin dominance historically has always been very high, before you see an alt season. For example, back in 2017, Bitcoin dominance was something like 95%. And then, it then started to move downwards, and that's when the altcoin market started gaining traction and moving to the upside. In 2020, Bitcoin dominance was around about 73% before we saw the altcoin market starting to really move. So in my view, and of course this isn't, any form of financial advice. We're not financial advisors on this show, but in my view, I think we need to see a Bitcoin dominance of much higher magnitude, in the 58% range maybe, before we see any significant alt season. But I'm not saying to the listeners that there won't be any movement on the altcoins. Of course there will be movement. They will move to the upside. They will follow Bitcoin on that trajectory to the upside. But the real sort of big movements that you get from altcoins, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will know that some altcoins will massively outperform Bitcoin. But that, in my view, won't happen until the dominance of Bitcoin in the market is significantly higher, so about 58% or so. But that's going to take time, and the people I speak to on a daily basis, big people, big investors, they're not interested at the moment in altcoins. They're more interested really in Bitcoin and seeing how the market goes. And as I said a moment ago, it's a healing process which takes time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's a super important point about this healing process, because even you said when you first started looking at crypto that you weren't convinced by it either. And I think that we both know that there's still a good market out there that is not convinced by it, or a market that believes there's something to it that's just not necessarily something that they have decided to dip their toes in. And then whenever you see such a big bearish market that we had last June, and then again in November with the FTX and all that stuff,
yeah.
It really doesn't look good for everybody that's been, flying the crypto flag and saying this is the future, this is the way, and then all of a sudden those same people are crying, and now the people that were not as confident before, now they are very confident that they made the right decision to not get into it. So, I think that it just takes some time for them to see that, these sort of things will happen. This is not, breaking any laws, that it is, going to have a bear market and a bull market. And, as they start to see that the crypto enthusiasts and the crypto traders and the crypto advisors gain a little bit more confident, then we're starting to see the introduction of, the newer investors, not just the same people that have been in it and the same people that have been talking to each other and the entire crypto community, but the new people that haven't had a chance to drink the Kool-Aid, I guess you could say. They'll start to get into it. And I think that this is where you'll start to see, some shifts that, it wouldn't be possible without them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my third cycle now, in crypto. And I've seen the ups and downs. I've seen it, so I know how it works, and people get shaken out. A lot of people say that the old test is when your next door neighbor says to you, have you bought any of this particular altcoin? Then that generally signals a top in the market, right? Because that, when those sorts of retail investors are getting involved in crypto, that kind of is the FOMO point of the market where, the news is talking about it. It's all very positive, et cetera. And then of course, a brutal bear market, follows. But once you get used to that, once you understand the cycle, you can really take advantage of it, if you're a position trader. It becomes part of you, and when you understand the cycle part, as a trader, as a position trader, and you can see these sorts of things coming. So, when I hear, really, really bad news, and there's been massive capitulative volume, and there's blood on the streets, that's usually the time to buy. And as I say, we're not financial advisors, but that's always generally a good time to buy. And you know what they say, when there's blood on the streets, even if it's your own, you should be taking advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I found that is very interesting about crypto and very, it gave me a lot more confidence is that, it is something you can get into at a lower price point. It is something that you have a slight low barrier to entry. You don't have to put your entire savings account into it. You don't have to take out a mortgage, to be able to get into this market. You can dabble, you can play around a little bit. You can make it fun, or you can make it, important. And, I think that that's something that's very important in gaining the confidence is just getting more people into the market, getting more people to play the game. And, that's really going to help the entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And every cycle there are different participants are coming in and, talking about the altcoin, potential altcoin season, a moment ago. What's quite clear as well from the cycles of Bitcoin is each altcoin season has a different type of narrative. And that narrative, drives the price in those particular assets. So, back in 2017, it was the ICO craze, that was massive, and it was, driving the price in ICO sales and in particular, crypto coins, which went up massively, and a lot of them went to zero, unfortunately. But that was the narrative, as it were, back in 2017. Then, the Bitcoin or the crypto bull market came in 2020, and the narrative then was, decentralized finance and gaming and, things like that, which was, also, and NFTs as well, driving the price. Yeah. So for me, it's about waiting for the narrative, because the narrative changes every cycle, and I think the narrative this cycle is going to be very different from the previous cycle and the cycle previous to that. But as you said, it's important that you don't invest too much in anything really, and you should only invest what you can afford to lose. And in particular with altcoins, you don't need to make big bets to get big returns, because some of these altcoins really do rally hard. So you don't need to make a big bet on something which is going to make you lose sleep at night. You should really just be putting a little bit of money in that you can essentially afford to lose, or you're willing to see that money go down significantly, or that position size go down.
Yeah, sure. And it was interesting what you said about narratives. What do you think the narrative will be this time around? I think that you said the next season should probably be early next year. What narrative are we looking at then?
Well, I think that one of the narratives is going to be possibly decentralized exchanges, and being able to trade both futures trading and spot trading on a decentralized exchange with low fees and good spreads. Because we had the FTX saga, we had the Celsius saga. Lots of crypto exchanges got wiped out, didn't they, in the last bear market. So I think a lot of people are a bit worried now about using exchanges, which is, absolutely right. And I should say to your listeners, if you are going to buy any form of, crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, then you must remove it from the exchange and hold it on in a private wallet for security purposes. But I think a lot of people are worried about the exchanges, so they're a little bit concerned about placing, their money on the exchanges or holding positions on exchanges. But with decentralized exchanges, that gets rid of the middleman, and it sort of assists in the security of things. So I think maybe decentralized exchanges might be a potential narrative for the next season. I think gaming is going to be a big narrative, probably because gaming has moved on massively since the last cycle and the cycle before. So I think that could potentially be a narrative. And I think layer one solutions as well. So, things that try to compete with Ethereum, etc., are always something interesting to look at as well.
Yeah, that definitely sounds interesting, and especially with the decentralized exchanges. That was something that, when I was first new into learning about all this, and, I know that the whole idea was that, crypto is safe, it's decentralized, and, you don't have to worry about, some old men sitting in a boardroom at a bank deciding what happens to your money. And then next thing you know, you see the exchanges starting to mess with each other. And you're like, I thought that the whole point of this was that you did just have some rich men deciding what happens to your money. Then all of a sudden you see what happened to FTX and everything tanks, and it's like,
exactly. Well, that's what a lot of people don't understand, that they think that when they get into crypto, it's all decentralized, which, arguably speaking, some cryptos are decentralized, some are not, but let's not get into that debate. But, generally speaking, like, let's let's talk about Bitcoin. Let's say Bitcoin is clearly a commodity. It's not a security and it's decentralized. But if you keep your Bitcoin on an exchange, on a centralized exchange, you don't own that Bitcoin. The exchange is holding that Bitcoin for you in custody for you. So what they say is not your keys, not your coins, which means that if you don't have the private keys for the wallet that the Bitcoin is being held on, then it's not your Bitcoin, and it could be seized, taken, from you, stolen from you, whatever. So that's why it's important to always remove your Bitcoin from the exchange that you buy it from, into, your own, private wallet, of which you have your own private keys to, which is very, very simple. A lot of people get freaked out by it, but it's very, very simple. And there's lots of YouTube videos that telling you what to do. And there are lots of very good wallets that you can use.
Great. That's actually a unique advice. I haven't heard that one yet.
No problem.
So what we sort of do at the end of these podcasts is I would like to just sort of get your quick, 1-2 line answers to, if somebody is just entering and they say, all right, I've heard about crypto long enough. Now I'm trying to, what do I do now? I've heard about it. I'm ready to sort of put my first payment in and see how it goes. What's the advice that you would give to them?
Well, my advice would be to set yourself a certain amount of allocation, so the amount of money that you think that you can afford to see go down significantly, if that's what happens, and then dip your toes in the water. You don't have to go all in straight away. Do lots of research. Make sure you follow the right people on Twitter. But it's always good to start with Bitcoin really and have a good base in Bitcoin in your portfolio. I mean, we always say that, again, not financial advice, but we always say it's good to have really, a good position in crypto would be sort of, 75% Bitcoin, 20% Ethereum, and maybe 5% allocated to altcoins.
And that's kind of the fun one.
That's the fun bit. Yeah, that's the fun bit. Yeah.
Okay, great. And, considering, how much you've grown in this space, personally and professionally, not just, make good trades, but, what advice would you give in a very short, brief, snappy answer? What advice would you give to a new entrepreneur just starting out?
Well, I think that, you need to, first thing you need to do is you need to understand what Bitcoin is really, and what Bitcoin brings, to the table. And then, go down the rabbit hole. It's a big hole. It's never ending. And I can guarantee all your listeners, if they're willing to spend the time, and they've got the resources to do it, then go for it. But, the rabbit hole is long. It's probably infinite. But, once you go down there, it's just a very interesting, space. And, if you've got time to dedicate yourself to crypto, then I think, there's lots of opportunities because, so many countries now are becoming very crypto friendly. I mean, for example, Dubai now has its own regulation. It's very crypto friendly. Dubai sees the future in crypto, which is really, really positive. Even Europe, that MiCA has just been passed. The European Union have passed, a bill, or the European Parliament or whatever have passed a bill. And the UK are also very, very crypto friendly. So lots of countries in the world are very crypto friendly. They see the future in crypto. And if you've got the time and the ability and the effort to throw yourself at this, then I think there's massive opportunity for lots of people.
Great. And I know that you're going to be coming to Dubai this October for Future Blockchain Summit. Obviously, it's taking place at Dubai Harbour alongside North Star from October 15th through 18th. What can we expect to see from you as a speaker at the Future Blockchain Summit?
So I'm going to be doing a talk, I think, on the 4-year cycle and the cycle of Bitcoin. And I'm going to be joined by Crypto Burb, Adrian, who's an amazing guy, excellent trader, really well respected, and he's going to be doing a talk as well on trading. So I'm very much looking forward to networking there, meeting lots of different people, and in particular, listening to Crypto Burb's or Adrian's address on trading, which we'll hopefully be doing together.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Caesar. We really gained a lot of insights from you. And I think that you've actually touched on a lot of things that, personally, in my time doing this podcast and working in this industry, I haven't heard some of the advice that you've given. So I think that this is something that our listeners would really appreciate. And I really look forward to seeing you in Dubai in October.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Great. See you then.
Thank you very much.